This is our new T-foil. They're bloody quick. I'm gonna run you through how they work, and it's gonna be technical. If that's not your thing, go watch something else. We're here in Auckland, New Zealand. The big news for this event is that we have a new foil package coming on board. So obviously, in front of me here is our new HSB2 T-foil foils. These things have been in development for a little over a year now. Basically, we had a few goals in mind when we were trying to bring on board this new package. Our old HSB foils were the traditional L or J foil, whatever you want to call it. What we're trying to achieve with the new T foil setup that you see here is a more reliable foil. So from a reliability standpoint, they're not going to break as often. We're not going to have as many issues with delamination and that kind of stuff. Second, we just want to go fast. Who doesn't want to go fast? So we're looking to have higher top speeds and just higher sustained speeds. We managed to break the speed record, 101.98 in San Francisco earlier this year with a testing foil version of this. So obviously the top end is there. And then the third thing we're looking for as well is, you know, with the two different packages with the light air boards and the heavy air boards, you have to make a decision on what package you're going to put in the boat basically the night before. And the weather gods don't always agree with whatever decision you've made. So sometimes you get the wrong package in the boat. And unlike a race car, you can't just put it up on jacks and change the tires. Changing the foils is a long process. So you're going to be caught out on the wrong package sometimes. With our new T-foil package that we have here, it has a wider usable wind range to still provide a good racing product for all of you guys watching on television at home. Okay, so obviously as you can see here, a little bit different than our original HSB foils. Our previous foils, well, there was a little bit of titanium in the trailing edge, but the lion's share of it was made out of carbon fiber. The vertical strut on our foils is still made out of carbon, as you can see. But the shoe and the T of the foil is a solid single milled piece of titanium with a little sort of a crush tip. It's like a crash section. So that if boats do come together, this little carbon bit on the outside is basically a sacrificial tip for safety. So obviously to manufacture a masterpiece like this and design a masterpiece like this, it takes a lot of time. So this foil has been in the design and build and alpha and beta testing for a little over a year now. We were lucky enough to be the team last season that was selected to do a lot of the testing on this. So we've been working with the SailGP designers and the structural engineers and the software people to do all of the design work for this end product foil for that little over a year. We've had, I think, 4 different iterations of elevator foils and 2 different iterations of vertical foils, as well as we've gone through probably 10 or 15 versions of software code trying to make this thing be a usable product and a usable package that you can get around a race course. The reason why we've had to do such an intense development run on all this stuff is that the physics of the way that this foil flies the boat is significantly different than the physics of the way that the L's or the J's would fly the boat. When you're sailing on the old high-speed foils or LAB foils, the lifting surface is fully on the inside of the vertical strut. So that the way that works is that the lifting pressure is all on the inside, and there's no the forces and the vectors are a lot different. Another feature of these foils as well is that with the old foils, when you got a bit high, you would lose the leeway prevention and you would feel the boat sort of start to slide sideways a bit. And that, as a flight controller, was kind of your cue that, okay, like we're getting a bit on the edge here, maybe time to tone it down a bit. And you would get the boat would give you some notice that, hey, you're pushing it a bit hard, maybe tone it down a bit. And then if you didn't tone it down, you go into one heck of a crash. With these foils, it doesn't give you that notice. So you're good, and then all of a sudden you're really not good. So the knife edge of control on these foils is very fine, and you get no notice of when it's about to let go. Another difference with these foils, with our old foils, the cant, so how far outboard or underneath the boat the foil was basically set. It was all the way outboard, and that's what it was, and you didn't have the ability to change it. With these new foils, that axis is fully controllable by myself on the boat, but as well as our strategist and our driver. So we've added in a whole nother axis of control over the foil. So not only do I have the fore-aft control that allows me to basically give lift with this big elevator here, I also have control to either put the dagger board fully underneath the boat or pump it fully outboard. So that does two things. First of all, the farther outboard on the cant you go, the more righting moment the boat has. So basically, the more power we can handle in the sail. It would be like adding 3 or 4 guys on the windward side to help keep that windward side of the boat, keep the heel angle correct. As well as with that, when you cant the board outboard versus inboard, the vectors of the way all that lifts the boat changes. When the T is fully underneath the boat like it is now, the lifting force on this foil is basically straight up. So you provide more lift for any given angle of attack that the foil has. As you cant the board outboard, the lifting vector starts to push to windward. So what that does, one, it reduces the amount of overall uplift that you get out of the foil. So obviously, to be able to cant the board further out, you have to have more speed so that lifting force is still enough to be able to hold the boat up in the air. But what that also does is it reduces the leeway. So leeway is, the way I like to describe leeway is, if you're driving a race car and you're going around a corner, when you have no leeway, it's like when all 4 tires are stuck in the racetrack and you can really turn around the corner. If you have too much leeway, it would be like if you have all 4 tires and then you hit the gas pedal too soon and you lose all grip and you start sliding towards that outside wall in turn 4. So our goal, especially sailing upwind, is to not have too much leeway. We want to have grip. We want to have the boat driving as to windward as possible so we can have the best VMG getting to the top mark. And what this cant allows us to do is you cant the board outboard so that that effective lifting force is not only lifting up, but it's lifting to windward. So what that does is it fights all those forces that are being put on our wing sail up top that are trying to push us downwind. What the cant outboard effectively does is provide a lifting vector that fights that force that's pushing us downwind and allows us to sail with more grip, basically, so less leeway. There is a limit to that though, because the way the dynamics of the boat work is that negative leeway is bad. So we don't want to have so much grip on this foil that it's actually pushing us upwind, because then that does really funky thing with all the forces and the vectors that are happening in the wing sail. There's this fine edge of adjustment of where, you know, you have enough uplifting force on the vector from the foil, and then you have enough windward vector lifting force on the foil, but not too much. So it's this fine dance of being able to not only get the angle of attack right to make sure the boat's high enough out of the water, but make sure that cant angle is correct to make sure that that leeway number is correct. Okay, so obviously right now the boat is sitting on the hard. There is this bit of red stuff here. The trailing edge of these foils is basically like the sharpest knife you have in your kitchen. So we have this protective cover that while we're on land goes on, so that when everybody's working around the boat, if nobody bangs a shin into that and opens that up, as well as when you have a foil that's going to go through the water at north of 100 kilometers an hour, any little ding, scratch, even oil from your hands on the foil is going to make a huge difference. So we're very careful about how this piece of equipment gets treated, and we make sure that it's always, you know, and making sure that nothing gets dings, scratches, and all that kind of stuff in. So that's why we have this piece of red protective bit on here. Okay, so now we're on the inside of the hull here. The inside looks a bit different. Obviously, there's no sacrificial tip on this end because it's on the inside of the boat, so there's no safety concern there. But as well, you can basically see well, I guess it's a bulb here. This is here for a couple reasons. Another difference between our old foils and this foil, our old foils were a single piece. These foils are actually made out of 2 pieces. So the vertical strut is 1 piece, and then the actual elevator foil is its own separate piece. So to be able to marry these 2 pieces together and create this one beautiful foil, there has to be a lot of structure in there, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of load that goes into that connection. So that's one of the main reasons why we have this bulb here, is to basically have enough material in there to be able to make that physical join between the 2 pieces of the foil. Another reason for that is, as you can imagine, if you have just one sort of straight wing straight across. And as you can see, it's obviously a very narrow foil. It's going to be very hard for the flow to attach to that. So part of what the bulb does is sort of break the boundary layer and help attach flow onto both sides of the elevator as well. So obviously you may be asking, the boards go in and out of the water, and there is a hole in the bottom of the boat. So how does this boat not sink when you're sitting in the water between races? The way the boats are manufactured is the daggerboard well is actually a wet well. So yes, there is a hole in the bottom of the boat, but that water basically cannot get into a bulkhead structuring that is in the boat here. Obviously also, if I've done my job real well, the boat's not actually in the water, so that's not an issue. But there's a case in there that basically can gimbal in 360 degrees in basically every angle. So that is what allows us to be able to not only have the angle of attack fore and aft, which is controlled by these cylinders, take up a lot of hydraulic oil. So as you can see behind me here, we have our oil filter, where all the hydraulic oil in the boat every night gets run through this filter to make sure it's clean, so there's not going to be any issues with the hydraulic system.
You like any T-foils?
Oh yeah, they're sick. Are you filming this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean they're bloody quick. I think they make for a better racing product, not only for the people watching on television or watching in the stands, but I think from an athlete's perspective, they're a step to the future. What is it? If you're not innovating, you're not going forward, you're going backwards. So this is, I think, a step in the right direction. Makes my job a bit more stressful because the speeds are a heck of a lot higher all the time. But yeah, going over 100 kilometers an hour in a sailboat's a pretty freaking cool feeling. Hi, Coop! Hello there! Welcome to my office. Obviously, with all the added functionality, there's a few bells and whistles in my cubicle. The hardware has largely stayed the same. But we have changed the functionality of what a lot of the buttons do. As you can see, we haven't made up new stickers, so I've gotten creative with some arts and crafts hour here and made my own stickers to tell myself what stuff does. So for the rake control, that stayed the same. So either one of these guys controls one foil. So obviously the inside foil does opposite side. This outside wheel does same side. Whereas in the past, we really only had to worry about rake angle and rudder average angle. Now we obviously have cant, but we also have cant. Our rake is being done with this wheel. Our rudder average is being done with the two buttons in the center cluster here. And then we also have our cant adjustment. So we have cant out and cant in for the opposite side foil. All of these are our rake is probably our most active control. And then sort of a 2A and 2B would be our cant control. So at any given time, you are flying the boat with one hand and you're changing rudders or changing cant angle with the other. We have changed, so we still run rudder differential. So obviously what that means is on the leeward side, our rudder is giving us a lifting force. And on the windward side, our rudder is giving us a negative lifting force. So providing riding moment. The same way as when you cant the foil outboard, that provides riding moment. The rudder differential also provides riding moment. So in the center cluster here, we have a max diff button, which brings the down force to the windward side. And we have a max diff opposite button, which will switch the differential to the opposite side of the boat. Luckily, I don't have to touch those too much. CJ likes to do a lot of that himself. But there are times when that is, when CJ's sort of got two hands and four things to do where I have to hit one of those. And this is where a lot of it's changed as well. So when we're going into a maneuver, we have that foil down. The cant is usually where it's supposed to be for where we're sailing, but we're going into a maneuver. This foil is going to drop at a different cant angle than I want it to sail in a straight line. So when we maneuver, the boat obviously slows down quite a lot. We'll be, when we're sailing upwind at 55, 60, 65 kilometers an hour. But when we maneuver, we'll slow down to 35, 40, 50 kilometers an hour. So with that, the lifting forces change. To be able to keep the boat up in the air at slower speeds, we need more uplifting force. So we will adjust the cant angle of the daggerboard based off of what the bottom speed is in the maneuver. So with that being said, when you're going in a maneuver, there's a lot on. So if I'm sitting here, I'm flying the boat on this side, we're going into a maneuver. That side, as we accelerate through the turn, is going to probably gain about an extra 5 to 7 kilometers an hour because of the dynamics of the turn. But as this foil goes down in attack, it loses 5 to 7 kilometers of an hour of relative speed. So we're going to want to have that foil really outboard, but we want to have this foil really inboard. And then obviously, as the boat accelerates and the speed comes on, we need to pump this foil outboard because we don't need all that lift. So there's a lot going on in a maneuver because obviously I'm flying this one foil and I have rudders and cant on this one foil. And as we're going into a maneuver, I'm trying to get my rudders, I'm flying, I'm trying to get my rudder set, I'm trying to get my cant set. And then obviously this board gets fired down into the water, at which point a hand comes over here and I've got to fly both boards, usually do a rudder add through the center. And then as the boat lands through the turn and the boat starts to accelerate, I have to then adjust the cant angle on this foil as well. So you got a lot on. You probably have, for each hand, you probably have 3 buttons that you need to press at any given time. With the cant being in active control, it's something that you have to keep an eye on. So whereas in the past, you know, I spend 85% of my time either focus on the bow or focus on the leeward side daggerboard for my ride height. And then the other 15 is sort of split between a quick look at one of my screens here to figure out where my rudder averages are, and then where my boat speed is. And then every once in a while, I'll take a peek back and look at the rudder and make sure I have enough rudder immersion. We've added another factor into that because the cant is something that it's very easy to get lost on where you are because there's no real visual cue from looking at the other side of the daggerboard as to where the cant angle really is. So on my screen here, there's 2 boxes on either side that contained within those boxes shows me my cant angle for both daggerboards, as well as I have a cant angle number on the screen that lets me know where the cant for the daggerboard is. So it's one of those things where it's just added another layer of complexity into how you have to fly the boat, and it's added one more thing that's going to take up your focus. So it's a lot on at times, but it's an awesome challenge. With the maneuvers, there's stuff that it makes it harder, but there's also stuff that makes it easier. With the old foils, one of the things that we struggled with in maneuvers, and especially downrange on the package, that you didn't have the ability to get enough lift to land those foiling maneuvers that make for this amazing racing that we have. With these foils, the overall amount of lift during the maneuvers is much higher because you have that extra axis of control. But that being said, it is much trickier because, again, you have to control that lift. And then along with that, when you're downrange on the package, you love the fact that you have all that extra lift. It can sort of make you look like a superstar because you're able to land maneuvers where previously you wouldn't be able to. But the flip side of that is that when you're mega uprange on the package, you're like, what am I going to do with all this lift? So when you're coming into a jibe doing 93, and all of a sudden you're firing this daggerboard down and you have more lift than you know what to do with, you have to have really quick reaction time and know what you need to do with the angle of attacks as well as with the cant numbers to be able to scrub all that lift off so that you don't sky the boat up into the air and then go into one heck of a nosedive. We have done that. We did that 3 days ago. That's why my back hurts. Okay, so now that we've showed you the sort of the control of how we control all this stuff, I'll take you across and let's show you what all those buttons and dials that I turn actually physically move. I'll give you a sneak peek into sort of all of the hydraulics and what those buttons and dials that I press over there, what they do. So obviously we have our vertical strut of the daggerboard here. And then if we look into the case here, we have basically the daggerboard case, which is this piece of carbon fiber that has some hydraulics on it. There's some cordage in it. But this is basically what holds the daggerboard into the boat. This is a physical attachment between the daggerboard and the actual boat. At the top here, you can see the physical locking mechanism, which is what when the daggerboard is fired down, that clicks into a physical lock. And this is what basically takes the load of the entire boat flying through the air. If we look a little bit closer in here, we can see all the hydraulic manifolds and the accumulators that hold the hydraulic pressure and the hydraulic lines that then feed into this hydraulic ram here, which is the one that I was talking about earlier that controls the cant of the dagger board. So how far either underneath the boat the dagger board is or how far outboard the dagger board is. This is a hydraulic system that I think has 180 bar of pressure in it. So very, very high pressure hydraulic system. But with it being a high pressure hydraulic system, it doesn't move overly quickly. So one of the things about with the cant system is that when you need to make a large cant change, you have to think about when you're going to need that, because the entire swing of the 14 or 15 degrees in the cant range takes about 8 to 10 seconds. So you need to make sure that you're on top of when you're going to need a certain cant angle and how much of a change that's going to be from where you're currently sailing. As you can imagine, there's a ton of load that goes on this dagger board, and there's a ton of load on that hydraulic system that has to push this entire dagger board forward or aft based off of what input I put on it on my controller for a certain rake number for the elevator. So inside where I'm standing here, there's a massive, massive hydraulic cylinder. It's probably about that big around, with a massive, massive amount of pressure in it. That cylinder is the cylinder that controls the rake. And unlike the cant cylinder, which is, yes, has a lot of pressure, but is a very slow moving hydraulic cylinder, the rake cylinder is a very, very high pressure and a very, very fast moving cylinder. And it's a push-pull cylinder as well. What that does is allows me to basically make quick, snappy movements on my control wheel on the opposite side, or on this side if we're on the exit of maneuver. And basically the rake angle of this dagger board via this gimbaled case here basically snaps really quickly to whatever input that I put into my controller. When we're sailing in a straight line, we only want 3 foils in the water. The more foils we have in the water, the more drag we have. And when we're sailing in a straight line, we just don't need the lift of all 4 foils. So we're gonna have 1 dagger board up, unless we're in a maneuver. So with that, we have to be able to raise and lower this dagger board. So we have, we basically have 2 systems. We have a dagger board up system, which is what you can see is on this arm here that runs through a sheave and hooks physically into the center of the dagger board here. What that does is when we're on the exit of a maneuver, we push a button, which tells the electronic system and the hydraulic system, basically makes sure that when we push that button, that then it tells the electronics and the hydraulics, okay, we want to get rid of that dagger board. So what this line does, runs through a system in the back here, which puts pressure into this line. It trips the lock at the top. So it'll basically pull the lock out, which then allows this rope to pull the dagger board up. When we're sailing in a straight line, it's like, okay, we're gonna hit a boundary here, or we're gonna hit a ley line here, we got to tack. We have a button that in the boat that our driver Giles, he'll step on that button, and that gives the hydraulics and electronics a value that says, okay, we need to drop this dagger board. So what that does is it disengages this board up line and allows a combination of 3 forces to push this dagger board down. So we have gravity, just pure gravity, as you can imagine. A massive piece of equipment like this weighs a decent amount of weight, of kilograms or pounds. So there's going to be some gravity on that. But then we have hydraulic pumps as well as hydraulic accumulators. And as well as a fourth force, I can give the dagger board negative rake, which as it hits the water will suck the dagger board down. So we use a combination of those 4 different forces to be able to get this dagger board down and get this physical lock to engage. Obviously a lot to unpack there. I hope that was helpful. It might be a bit much for the average person, but for those of you like me who love the really like internal ins and outs of the way things work, I hope that it was informational. And if you studied enough, you might be able to take my job one day, because I am getting older. Well, obviously as well, if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about here with the control systems, about the team, any of that stuff, feel free to drop them in the comments or reach out to us on social media, and we'll always try and get back to you.
Well done, Billy. Wow, a video essay on the T-foil.